You're listening to Chem Stories, a podcast series created by people with lived experience of P&P chemsex.
Hi kittens, this is Captain Patrice welcoming you aboard Chem Stories Airlines for our YUL Creativity flight. In this second Montreal departure, host Éric introduces Gabriel, an experienced flyer and Montreal-based fashion designer whose uncanny signature style shines a light on aspects of life that normally remain in the shadow. They highlight how creative expression can serve as a vital tool for processing shame, making amends, and finding a sense of purpose amidst struggle. We'll be underway shortly, so please make sure to keep your hearts and minds open at all times. Keep your prejudices securely stowed, as this flight is a judgment-free zone, and prepare for takeoff. Should you experience turbulence while listening to this podcast, please visit our list of resources and services related to P&P chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca. Thank you for choosing Chem Stories Airlines, where the journey is always a trip.
Hi everyone! Welcome to this new episode of Chem Stories. I'm Éric Noël. I'm the host of the Montreal section of this podcast. And today I'm joined by two artists because we're going to talk about the relation between chemsex, art, and creation. So we're going to talk about how chemsex was involved in our creative process and maybe what can chemsex give to people through art and how our art can be influenced also by our lived experience. And many other subjects. We're going to go also in the lives of these two artists that are two people that I really love and I love their work also. So I'm really glad we have them with me today. So I'm going to just say your name, but I'm going to let you kind of do your own presentation. So I'm here with Mikiki. They are a performance and video artist and a queer community activist. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Mikiki.
Hi.
And also with Gabriel Drolet-Maguire. They are a fashion designer. And hi, Gabriel.
Hi.
Hi. So maybe I can maybe start by presenting myself and why I choose to talk about this subject. I'm myself an artist. I'm a playwright. I'm a translator also. I do some performance. I've been acting and directing also, but my main body of work is text. So I write. All my plays are around queer characters and queer themes, I would like to say. But one of my plays was produced last year. So the play is called, in French, Ces regards amoureux de garçons altérés, and in English, it's The Loving Gaze of Messed Up Boys. I wrote this play in 2015 when I was actively doing chemsex, and I was struggling with my chemsex use a lot. And I was also in a very difficult moment in my career. I was not able to write. Basically, my chemsex was kind of too present to allow me to do anything else. And so I was out of National Theatre School like 5 years before. And since I was out, I was mainly using most of the time. So I was not writing and not doing anything that was what I thought was my dream. And I was also feeling very disappointed about this idea of a career that I had for myself. And so at one point, I started to just write in bad houses at home when I was after a few days of using. I was writing what was happening. I was writing about people I was meeting. And at one point, a director of a festival offered me a spot in a festival and asked me, do you have a text? Do you have something? And I said, yes, but I have nothing. But I took this as an opportunity to kind of, okay, I'm going to just write this thing that maybe I'm writing about. And I didn't know what it was. And it ended up being this monologue that was played at Théâtre Prospero last year. And yeah, it changed my life. So I'm going to stick just to that for now, but because I want you to maybe talk a bit about your project and maybe after we can bounce back and I can come back to my writing. But for me, the chemsex experience was really an important part of my creative process as a playwright. And this play was an important also in my journey as an artist. So I'm curious to know about you. Who wants to start?
I can start. Yes. So hi, my name is Gabriel Maguire. I'm currently living in Montreal, but I'm originating from Quebec City. I am 30 years old. I've been in the fashion industry, clothing, costuming industry for the past 10 years or so. And since I've graduated from university, from my bachelor, I've been attracted to speaking on subjects which are related to hardships that I've been through. So my thing is I like to bring to light subjects that are in the dark. My graduate collection named SØRRY MØM was about my recovery from chemsex. And then as things went on, I decided to speak and open up about other subjects, such as my HIV diagnosis, which was linked to my using. And I enjoy speaking on these things in my work because for me, fashion is inherently political, and I enjoy making art that speaks to other people, that is not just pretty for the sake of being pretty, but has a message, as a soul. And I kind of infuse my soul in what I do. The goal is to kind of heal through these collections and kind of by sharing. Yeah, it's very cathartic. My process, I like to kind of really go deep and question myself on these things and being super raw about these. But at the end of the day, the end product these things are not written anywhere. It's all metaphorical. It's all kind of imagery that relates to personal experiences. And I feel at the end of the day, the product, the result has that soul, has that energy, has that vibe, that grit, without it being, oh, it's about crystal meth or it's about HIV or blah, blah. You kind of are moved. I feel if I think about all the presentation, runway shows or body of work that I've done in the past, I feel when I get the feedback is it's always very moving and very sentimental. And by being also vocal about these subjects, I feel I want people to feel less alone as well, because being diagnosed with HIV or having had experiences with chemsex, I was very alone. I felt very alone throughout these experiences, and felt some sort of unfairness after having lived through those things. And my motivation is to kind of fill that gap where people can kind of identify themselves and feel less alone. So myself, I enjoy listening to music, and I always feel listening to artists that I like, I kind of relate to what's written in their music, and I feel kind of less alone. So I kind of wanted to give that feel throughout my work. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe I want to jump, because you talked about your fashion shows, and I saw the one you did where you had SØRRY MØM and HONEYCUM, just one after the other. And I was curious because when I was looking at, I really like what you said about the emotion and the kind of the gravity. And I would say it's a very dramatic, SØRRY MØM is very dramatic. The models were going on the catwalk with a really fast pace, with a kind of really hard faces. And you said it was about your recovery, but I also felt it was about some kind of really dark place in maybe your using times. And then it was interesting because then the transition with HONEYCUM, which is yellow and very there's a lot more light, but also talks about your diagnosis of HIV. So it's kind of interesting, this kind of transition. And I would like maybe to, if you can, if you want to talk about that, this kind of connection between the two collections. And just so you know, we are watching at the moment. You cannot see it. You are watching the images of the fashion show, and you have the links to go watch the video while you're listening to the podcast.
So SØRRY MØM was about my recovery from crystal meth. That was my first kind of solo fashion show that happened at Festival Mode Design back in 2017. It starts with a tableau of really dark black and navy silhouettes that are pretty much covered head to toe. This phase of the collection kind of describes the deep end, because basically the collection SØRRY MØM is about my world being flooded and destroyed by water. And through that flood, trying to rise to the surface and purify myself. So let's say the first 3-4 silhouettes are about that deep end, the darkness of being trapped underwater. So there's also those highlights of latex, which kind of like gives it a very like also sexually referencing to the sex part of using. And then when you move to like the green and beige part, khaki, it's kind of like the water clearing up and everything going up to the surface and kind of looking at the wreckage that's coming up and like how, and just like being in like total shock of like what's happened.
It's almost like the color of like silt that after a flood, where you have like everything is just covered in the detritus and the residue of all of the water,
the mud,
that's
very muddy,
struck everything up,
smoke, muddy, kind of like the after the flood, everything is like kind of messed up. So I kind of like, and the last tableau is kind of about like it's kind of referencing to those like wedding gowns.
Yeah, with the white coming.
Yeah, but the white is actually stained with like cigarette like ashes. Because Sorry Mom is about also like
we can
accepting the emptiness that using leaves behind. But when you try to like erase the emptiness, you still kind of are filled with those holes. So the cigarette was about like literally I stopped using and I kept just using cigarettes. So that was like kind of like the residue of my using was cigarettes at that time. And to me, it was also very like, I don't know, to me it was punk to like stain like white velvet silk with cigarettes. And yeah, so you still kind of see the silhouette kind of like drown into water and
also a bit like Medusa style, you know, like the way it floats and the way it bounces where the models are walking.
And the choices of fabric, kind of like organza, velvet, latex, kind of all reflect light differently, but also reminiscences of like different stages of that, trying to purify myself, the water. So at the end, the water is still not clear. It's kind of beigey, but a clearer beige. Still not attaining the fully perfect white. So that's kind of like the lesson of the thing is like, even though if you try to like be perfect or clean yourself up or like leave all that behind, there's still going to be traces and you have to kind of embrace these things. And those traces that are left kind of like makes you and makes this new version of you that is, that you can move through life with a different side on it. And I feel like it's also about like owning that. And the moving into HONEYCUM, which was written on a plus. I didn't really like say it that it was about HIV at that time because I wasn't ready. I just like had been diagnosed 9 months ago before that collection came out. But it was kind of like the innuendo. So the bee stings. And to me, like I felt stinged by HIV in a way. The honey is like cum. So HONEYCUM. So it's like, that collection was almost like manifesting my happy ending after going through like trauma of like using, but ended up being like this like missed orgasm left with like bitterness and still sorrow. And so it's like wanting desperately to be loved, but also being worried of like passing it on. So you see this couple of dancers that are like linked by one arm but can't reach each other. They're still stuck. So there's the image of like a bee stuck in amber, feeling trapped, not being able to like reach like a full intimacy or reach their loved ones, but desperately wanting to. So it's like kind of like stages of like, then it's like this silhouette kind of reminded me of like the sun and something more joyful, maybe something I hoped for myself. And then there's like the creature look, kind of drag queen creature look, kind of slimy, kind of like dark and sexual. And at the end of the runway, it was me that walked as the queen bee with the solar plexus honey ring protecting my energies and kind of like, but still wearing my tears. And and like there's the red boots kind of like foreshadowing to the next collection, which would be about HIV fully and out.
Yeah. And
so the link is just the link that makes sense to me is just the timeline of my life, but there's no like particular like, but of course, like to me, maybe like the water kind of transforms itself into honey in a way, and then into blood eventually.
For the Dear Vicky, which is your
But then
next collection
exactly.
was Dear Vicky, and it was around reds and
Yeah, so it kind of like all follows each other in a way. And fabric choices also, the organza is always something that I use to kind of like represent somewhat of like some sort of liquid. So Sorry Mom was water, different stages of water, then honey, then blood in Dear Vicky.
Who's Vicky?
Vicky?
Yeah.
Dear Vicky is my next collection after that one. And Vicky is like the person I created to speak to my HIV.
Okay.
Yeah. So Vicky is like this person, this character I created to kind of like be able to speak to someone, to adjust myself to HIV. So VIH in French, Vicky.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, how does it felt for you when you were at that fashion show, and you like, how does it felt to show this kind of vulnerability to people
During the fashion show, Festival Mode Design, the one we just watched, right?
Yeah.
That day was very special. It was like, it fell on like on the anniversary, like 9-month sobriety of that time. I don't know, something was up in the air. Like everything felt super like, because at that time I wasn't like doing any like meetings and stuff about like my chemsex habits. I was pretty much connecting my recovery to my art very, very closely. So everything to me was a sign. So that day, I remember we were like all getting ready at UQAM, and we're the group of HONEYCUM together, like kind of yellow. And then there's this person on the street that gives me a yellow flower.
Oh.
And then, I don't know, just like everybody felt part of something. Like all the models, they were like 15 models, hair and makeup. It just felt like a little like family.
Yeah.
And when I got to like the Festival Mode Design set, and I saw everybody like in full makeup, in full like outfit, I kind of like teared up, and I was very like touched by like how the people I've surrounded myself with kind of like executed the vision, and it was very touching. But also I was in the same headspace. I was in like game mode. I need to perform. I need to like be backstage and like walk this runway.
Yeah, you were working.
So it was really like a high stress pressure environment, but it kind of felt surreal. It's like this big high of like sharing and being vulnerable.
So was it 9 months of sobriety and also 9 months post-diagnosis?
Yeah, around the same time, yeah.
Motherfucker. Not just one. So it's okay. That's intense.
Yeah.
It's really,
And you said you weren't doing groups, like not
I wasn't doing like...
were you just raw dogging your journey for that? Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, I was doing that. And it was very intense. But I had this like fire of like, I want to speak on this matter. I want it to be like public. I want it to be like known that this is happening. Like, that if there's another young person like me in their early 20s, because like I was...
Oh, you were a baby.
I was 22, 23 at that time. Now I'm 30. So I was really, 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 really wanting to have that message out.
For sure.
And I think I did it at that time, like 2017 in Montreal. Chemsex, I feel, was getting more and more popular.
Yeah.
In its early stages, maybe. Like mid-early stages, I don't know.
Yeah.
For me, it was like my peak. For sure, like when I was using, for me, my using was very brief and very intense. Mostly weekends, and quickly switched to injection after like 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Of starting, because I was like, let's go, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because I grew up with a father and a sister, a family with like addiction and drug abuse. So for me, like addiction was something that I judged and I kind of like wanted to stay away from. But as soon as I started trying things and like partying and stuff, like when I was offered crystal meth for the first time, I didn't even think of what it was. I just said, let's go, let's try this new thing, you know? And I really enjoyed it. And quickly, I owned my own pipe, you know? But like I would, when I was using, I was going to school, doing an internship and working. And I would like call off of like my internship or call off of work because I would want it to keep going, you know? Or I would go to school, I haven't had any sleep, and you know? So I would still participate in like my responsibilities that I had, but in a way, maybe that wasn't as present.
Yeah.
Very also tired because every week I would recover from it, and the weekend I would do it again. That was kind of like my rhythm.
Yeah.
Like I've never really got into it again after, but I felt like I wanted people my age or younger to know that this was out there, and that if they were to try doing like crystal meth or doing chemsex, at least they had the information. At least they knew what they were going into. At least like there was some sort of like person out there that was like, okay, I've been through it. This is what happened. Like, because I felt like I kind of went into it blindly, and I kind of resented the fact that there wasn't enough information out there for me.
But many people start crystal meth not knowing that they're starting crystal meth.
Of course.
That's the first time they just, they offer something and they don't know what it is, or it's so common now. So,
and that collection really like kind of saved me, because if I didn't have that, maybe I would have fell again. Maybe there would have been like, I had something to live for, and I had something to kind of like fight for, and like it kind of motivated me, gave me like a sense of like, why am I on this earth? Like in a broader sense.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I think our journey like are a bit similar in that for me, writing the play about chemsex that I talked about, it was the first time I was talking about it actually to people. Like I was really in having two lives at that time. I was like having my chemsex life with partners and many guys and many people, and then I had like my friends, family that didn't know anything about this other life that I had. And writing the play and making it public was kind of the way I had, like through fiction, to talk about it for the first time and kind of reunite those two lives and like reunite myself. Like I have one life. And it was for me the beginning of the healing, surely. And it was for me also like the first thing I did to, I would say, recover, to kind of like, I was not, doing groups or therapy, or I was not even really knowing how I wanted to stop, or did I want to stop? Like I didn't know what was going on, but I just knew that I was suffering. And that's very interesting that you talk about this idea that maybe like at the same time you had like the diagnosis and being sober and doing this, like you said, Mikiki, raw is really difficult. So I think, thank God you had your collection and your fashion show coming. I think it really pushes us.
I'm so glad that you got to do that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful also for the environment of like, for me, like the academia, like being in like a university in fashion, I was kind of pushed to kind of like go deeper and always deeper and like reach myself in a way. And like I had the option to, like I could have done my collection on any subject that I wanted.
Leaves.
But I just got out of the hospital doing a real like using before the semester started, got pushed into school, and then I just like, for me it was just, there was no other option of doing it other than that.
You said going deeper, like as a part of your strategy. Could you talk a little bit? Sorry not to take over the hosting, but I have a question.
Please.
I have a question. It's like, when you talked about going deeper, like as a part of the process, do you feel comfortable to talk about like what that looks like or felt like?
I mean, of course, like the environment of university versus like, let's say college can be very surfacey. Like, oh, I like this picture of a mountain and I'm going to make a collection about it, the color schemes or whatever. But when I brought my little booklet like from university and we were pushed of like using like going, like reaching, like researching about articles, researching about things that were going on around us, inside us. So I did like this whole research on like crystal meth, on like a bunch of stuff that prep, HIV, because at that time that was kind of like where I was going. And I was wondering, why is it getting so popular? I was like looking at even like porn images or like things to kind of like get me in that mood of like when I was using. And then at one point it kind of became overbearing, where I couldn't like just continue just doing a collection about meth. So I decided to do a collection about the solution of, which would be recovery. And I've always like enjoyed water, being young and like the water mermaids or whatever. And and it kind of no, but I've always been into water. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I kind of went back to the basics, and to me it was like water, my mother,
Yeah.
like the origin of life. And I felt like through my using my whole origin of like, it's like everything that I had built or that my family, my mom had like built for me, I kind of like threw away and kind of got destroyed and I had to rebuild it. So Sorry Mom was about kind of like making amends to like the hopes that my mom had for me, like giving birth to me. And now I was kind of like messing it up by using and by, so Sorry Mom has 2 O's in it, and French O is water. So it was kind of like this like whole symbolism about the letter O. And then I researched about like the theta, which is the 8th letter in the Greek alphabet, which speaks on the end of a world and the renewal of the world, you know?
Okay.
So that kind of like how I wrote Sorry Mom was about that O being slashed. And yeah, so the O, the 0, O water is kind of like that emptiness that you're trying to take away by slashing it in the middle, but there's still those 2 holes. So you kind of like, even if the imagery is like, even if she tried to give me the best life that I could by slashing out those empty places, there will still be empty places to deal with that I'll be left with myself.
Yeah. And they're still contained within
Yeah.
that circle.
So it was like this old like symbolism about like water and like mythology and like there was even like this like fable, like this story like from indigenous communities about like the world being like destroyed by water. So it's kind of like all mixed up and kind of like gave birth to like this kind of like metaphor of like this flood being represented as using.
And a runway collection is off, like people will often refer to that as like birthing a collection.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. When you say you went deep, you weren't lying.
No, and
I wasn't lying.
no, I also feel that when we look at your collections after, it's really beautiful. I say when you say I made this collection to kind of make amends. I think it's really beautiful because at the same time, it deals with shame, which is a very, very, very queer thing to deal with. But it also deals with hope. I think like I really feel that when you talk about it and when we look at the collection and just the fact of putting it out there really puts a lot of hope. And maybe we can come back to that, but I really think that even when we share something very dark or very deep, dark and difficult, just the fact of sharing it brings a lot of hope.
Attention all passengers, Captain Patrice speaking. We've reached our cruising altitude. We're now approaching the second part of our YUL Creativity flight, where Montreal host Éric introduces Kiki, an experienced flyer who is also a performance and video artist and queer community health activist, to share their journey with chemsex. More compelling stories await. Subscribe to stay updated. If you've encountered turbulence while listening to this podcast, please refer to our list of resources and services related to PNP Chemsex in the episode description and on chemstories.ca.